Hello, I'm Jane Goldman. I've always been fascinated by psychic phenomena and the paranormal, and I am open-minded, but I'm also one of those kind of people who has a hard time believing in things if I haven't seen them for myself. So that's why I decided to take a very hands-on approach to my investigations into the paranormal. I've asked the experts whether they can teach me 10 different skills, and I've got just a month to learn each one. At the end of the 4 weeks, I'm going to be tested. What have I let myself in for?
This week I'll be looking back to see who I was before I was me as I investigate the practice of past life regression. Millions of people all around the world believe in the idea of reincarnation. That's the idea that we've all lived before and we'll all live again somehow. A lot of people also believe that through hypnosis and other methods, you could be regressed to actually remember details of those past lives. I wonder what it'd be like to actually look back, find out who you were. Was I a gypsy? Maybe a cowgirl. Or perhaps a geisha. But I could have been a murderer. Whoever I might have been, the idea of uncovering memories from a previous life has become an incredibly popular and quite trendy form of modern therapy. I'd come along to see a session led by Nicola Dexter, who teaches a technique called guided visualization. The idea is that it's possible to solve any problem in your current life by experiencing and exploring your previous ones.
After recalling the past life, all the pain went, she never had the pain again.
The group split up into pairs, and Nicola led them through the visualization technique that apparently enabled them to access memories to their former lives.
I'd like you to begin to imagine that you're going for a beautiful. As you turn, you see immediately that it's a fantastic castle. There are 4 closed doors.
What was going on? Nicola was reading what sounded like the beginning of a fairy story, but it seemed to pull the listeners in an almost magical way.
As soon as you enter, you'll be reliving an important event in a previous life.
I wondered, was the power in the words? Was it in the way they were said? Or was it in Nicola herself?
Do you think that you're male or female?
A young boy, actually.
A couple, 100, maybe 200 years ago.
I feel like I'm kind of living in the wild somewhat.
I don't want to go through this door. I'm so scared.
As I looked around the room, I was amazed that so many young people had taken time out of their undoubtedly busy present lives to spend hours trying to find out if they'd had any past ones. Like most others in the session, my partner, Tony, was hoping to use his past life memories to make sense of a current problem.
I kind of feel we were chased out of where we were before, possibly.
Okay.
Forced out.
Apparently, in his past life, Tony's family was driven from their jungle home, and it was clearly an emotional experience for him.
Wow.
Oh, Tony.
Crumbs.
Was it really moving?
I am going through something very similar in my life at the moment. We are thinking of moving away to the country. And I'm really in a dilemma as to whether we should do it or not. But it's a big leap. I have to obviously be certain for my family.
When those things were coming to your head, did they feel like memories?
It was kind of like I was in a hazy dream.
Do you feel certain in your mind about what they were, or do you about what those sensations were? Because a psychologist might say,
definitely.
it's a representation. But you definitely feel that it was a past life.
I think it must have been, or even if it wasn't, it's helping me now in this life, so it doesn't really matter if it was or wasn't.
Oh, well, that's all marvellous, and it certainly explains why past life regression is popular as a therapy, but it's not much help if you're really trying to discover the truth. Could it all just be imagination? I wanted to know what had convinced Nicola that these were real past life memories.
Mainly it's because they don't recall choosing or deciding what they're going to think about. Actually, the memories just pop in. And so they're not experiencing the choice or the decisions as you would if you were making up a story.
It felt like being in the theatre and going into a door where there is a play happening and actually watching that play. At times I feel I'm making it up, and at times I feel like it's kind of real. And then at the end of it I feel like, but I wouldn't have made that story. I wouldn't have chosen that story to make it up, you know. I would have made a much prettier story or something like that. So.
Oh, the feeling I got from it, the fear. My hands were all sweaty, and apparently I had a look of intense fear on my face as well. But, you know, it was a situation that I'd rather not have been in. But I wanted to find out more about it.
After the end of the session, while everyone else was comparing notes, Nicola gave me my homework. Apparently the power was in the words, and I could use her magical fairy story to guide other people through past life visualizations, as long as I had the right attitude.
Trust your intuition. And come from contribution, so getting them to forgive themselves, to forgive others, to kind of heal whatever it is that they're recalling.
So not to be sort of cold and analytical, but to be very careful and responsible and make sure that they're not uncomfortable and that it's a positive experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think I can hopefully manage that, yeah. Well, that was interesting. I did find that really fascinating, actually. What was curious was the fact that even the people who didn't believe in reincarnation or were sort of undecided, even they came up with things. Everybody came up with things. So still not quite sure what's going on there, but it was an interesting introduction to the whole thing. These are called Phoenix cards. I think the idea with these is you lay them out in lines of 7, and then you're supposed to see which 7 you're most drawn to. This is much more the kind of thing that I've always associated with past lives. I think they're cards that represent different cultures and eras, you know, ancient Egypt and that sort of thing. Those are the kind of things you think about when you think about past lives. Although actually in Nicola's workshop there wasn't anywhere near as much of that sort of thing as I thought there would be. The cards did have some interesting images, but I didn't feel any of them had much to do with any past life I might have had. The popular idea of past life regression is a fairly modern and Western phenomenon. Although lots of religions like Hinduism and Buddhism believe in reincarnation of the soul, nobody really thought it was possible or even desirable to check out your previous incarnations. But it does have some high-profile fans. Actress Shirley MacLaine has written 3 books on her past lives and believes that her former lover, the murdered Swedish Prime Minister, was a reincarnation of the Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne. Saddam Hussein believes he was the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar in a previous life. And then, of course, there's the Dalai Lama, chosen specifically because he was identified in a series of tests as the reincarnation of the previous High Lama who had just died. I was keen to find out if the magic words from Nicola's fairy story would work for me. 2 volunteers had bravely agreed to let me lead them through the guided visualization technique. Maybe they'd had lives as kings or emperors, religious leaders. I was hoping to get some juicy past life information from Xanthi and Patricia that I could research afterwards. But there was always the chance that I wouldn't get anything at all. Okay, if you close your eyes, and if you just begin to imagine that you're going for a beautiful walk, and as you turn, you see immediately that it's a fantastic castle. Through each door is access to one of the many previous lives that you have lived. As soon as you enter, you will be reliving an important event in the previous life. Do you get any sense of where you are?
Yep, I can see a lake and some green hills.
I can see a road, a street. It's very urban and busy.
Do you know what year it might be or what era?
Beginning of the century, last century.
Feels like a long time ago, 100 years ago, or perhaps 200 years ago.
I found a bridge, crossed the bridge, walking into a forest.
There's a house. I'm going into it. It's very dark inside.
Find a rope ladder that leads up into the tree. There's a little tree house.
The person you've come to visit, are they here?
Yes, she's in bed. I think she's ill.
I'm in the tree house. There's a little girl in the corner.
Do you know her name?
Emily.
How do you feel when you see her?
Sad to see her. I think it's the first time I've seen her for a long time.
I think I'm starting to walk back, and I've kind of not taken care to see where Emily is.
If you move forward in time a little, what happens next?
I'm in an open, sort of green place. There's some kind of gravestones.
Do you know what's happened to Emily?
I knew there was something wrong because she wasn't going home. I think that's what I realised. She's running away from something.
How do you feel if you go back to that day?
I think I should have seen her again, but didn't.
She's in a lot of trouble the next day, so they found
How
her.
does that make you feel?
Bad. Guilty.
It's like guilty feeling, really.
As you stand in
I
the
should
grave.
have gone back. Should have gone to see her.
That's strange. They both felt guilty. I wonder if that's significant.
That's really weird.
It sounded very emotional.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Did you feel it related to something that's particularly on your mind at the moment?
That's what I was trying to think. I'm sure it's to do with friends. You know, whether I'm being good to my friends or not.
Should sort of be more responsible in carrying out commitments to people, I suppose. To do things that you say you're going to do and then don't do them because it's not convenient. You know?
We all do that. Absolutely. Hang on, surely that was a bit too easy. I mean, you know, I read out Nicola's thing and tried to do it in the same tone of voice that she'd done it. And again, everyone seemed to come up with something. I guess it's like any visualization or meditation, any kind of relaxation exercise. You know, you're letting your mind drift and then things pop into your head. Even Nicola says that, you know, that's that guided visualization is, in a way, a lighter way of doing it. It's not like hypnosis. And I guess in order to really go deep, you use hypnosis. I mean, I know Nicola does, many other people do. I guess that's going to be the next step in my investigation. After the break, it's never worked before, so will it be possible to hypnotise me? And I meet a woman who believes that 400 years ago, she was married to country music megastar Garth Brooks. That is extraordinary. The next step for me in my exploration was to go deeper, and that meant finding out about hypnosis. But the first step in learning about hypnosis was to be hypnotised myself. I arranged to meet one of Britain's leading past life regressionists, Tony Ray. He uses hypnosis to enable people to access what seem to be past life memories, and he's uncovered some remarkable stories. He also claims to have produced the regressionist's Holy Grail, a subject speaking in a foreign language that they apparently hadn't previously learned. But today he was going to try and hypnotise me, and I wasn't going to be an easy subject. Tony, there's a couple of things I'm kind of concerned about. Thank you. First one was, no one's ever managed to hypnotise me, which is, but I'm not being belligerent about it because I would love someone to be able to. I'd love to have the experience, but I just wanted to warn you that if it doesn't work, it's not you, it's me.
Okay, no problem. Right, well,
Okay.
there are two golden rules, Jane, that you want it to happen and that you allow it to happen.
Okay.
Okay, the only two reasons for failure, one of them is a four-letter word, and that word is fear.
Right.
I'm sure that's not going to be the case here.
Okay.
But the other thing we have to be careful of is that if you start to overanalyze what's being said to you,
Yeah.
and then you're sort of trying to work it all out in your head, what does this mean? Is he implying this? Then you're going to block it off for yourself.
Right. I mean, maybe
the
that's
only
been
reason.
my problem. I mean, I'm
Sure.
all right at meditation and I've done
Yeah.
visualization and stuff.
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Cool,
Yeah, and just
okay.
go with the flow. So Jane, as I touch you on the forehead, start to let all that tension just go out of your head and neck. As if the head's feeling so heavy, and just allow it to fall even further if you wish into a very comfortable and relaxed position. Just let it sink even further down now. That's excellent.
Tony had managed to send me to a strange place I'd never been to before and didn't actually feel hypnotised, but then I didn't feel quite normal either. Well, maybe this is what being hypnotised is like.
So if you're ready, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you've already allowed yourself to go through the door, have you?
Yeah, but I can't see anything. But I feel boiling hot.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
It's quite warm where you are then, is it?
Yeah, that's the main sensation I've got. Is I'm really hot.
The area where we are now, is this, you say it's hot, but is it inside or outside?
I think it's inside, but it's quite near the elements. I don't know, I think, actually, that it's a ship.
A ship?
It's
Right.
It's
Is there any feeling of movement where you are now?
yeah, I feel a bit sick, actually.
Okay, well you won't be sick, I can promise you.
Okay.
You will not be sick, I absolutely guarantee that. But you feel it's some form of ship.
Although a lot of the images coming to mind were vague and sketchy, I clearly thought of a group of men on board the ship, and one man was particularly vivid in my mind. His name came to me as William.
What sort of age
I think
is
he's got a
going?
jacket as well.
Oh,
he's the only
wearing
one.
he's the only one wearing a jacket? Okay, what colour is his jacket?
Green,
Green.
velvet.
Yeah. Velvet jacket?
Yeah, but it's really had it.
Has it? Oh,
Well, it's
not in the best of conditions.
it doesn't fare well very well at sea, I guess.
No. Has he been at sea a long time, do you think?
Well, yeah, all his life, I think.
All his
I mean,
life?
with the odd break, but
Yeah.
yeah.
If I were to ask you your name, how would you reply? What would your name be?
I've no idea. A name
Right.
did come into my head. I don't know if it's
Well, would you like to share that name
yeah,
with me?
Peter
please?
Macy.
Peter Macy.
That was
And
just the name.
a name that came into your head. And how old do you believe Peter Macy is at this time when you're on this ship? How old is Peter Macy?
23. I protect William, I think.
You protect William. Okay.
In
In what way do you
I don't know.
protect
I
him?
don't know. I don't know. I think it's useful for you to have someone you can trust. You know.
You think,
think
it's
that's the
useful
idea.
for you to have
I
someone
think
that
that's
you
the
can trust?
idea of having someone like me.
Right.
I
You're
think.
someone who William would trust then, are you?
Yeah, because you wouldn't always trust the other people you were with.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we're going to leave it there. So you just have a little rest and just relax for a few moments and just breathe nice and gently.
Oh, God.
Right. I think if you could just let yourself go that little bit more, you're really on the verge of doing it extremely well.
I'm really surprised
You
I
are
said
sort of
anything.
holding back.
But there were times when I feared that stuff was just coming from just recesses of my memory, but not like memory like I'd lived it, but memory like things I'd read or just things were popping into my head and I was saying
Yeah.
them. Actually, I mean, I hate going to sea now. I
Oh,
hate
right.
ships. But
Right.
I get
Okay.
really seasick. But I'm fascinated by the history of kind
Right.
of seafaring.
Why? Where does the fascination come from?
I just assumed it's kind of random fascination. It's just a romantic period, though, isn't it? It's, as a lady,
Well,
that might
yes, but
appeal.
as a lady, you could look at the style of ladies living in luxury in big houses in London,
True.
or houses in the country,
Yeah.
or riding out on horses. Why would you choose ships?
Don't-
Well, exactly.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
One has to consider the possibility, and I'm not saying it's any higher than that, one has to consider the possibility that maybe your interest in ships today could be as a result of an experience that happened in the past life.
That was really embarrassing. That was weirdly embarrassing. It was, I have to say, hats off to Tony. First time anyone's ever got anywhere close to actually hypnotising me. So that was remarkable. And it was weird. I mean, I think I felt hypnotised-ish, although I was still, at times, very much more self-aware than at other times. But what was difficult for me coming out of that was the fact that, in a sense, it would be possible, if you wanted to interpret it as being put under hypnosis and then encouraged to fantasize. And I think what worried me about the stuff that was coming out, that I was coming out with, was, I think it was an odd soup of books I've read, movies I've seen. There was a slight embarrassing element of, you know, oh, romantic, piratey, you know. So I feel a bit of an idiot. Anyway, God, I still feel like I'm bright red. That was hugely embarrassing, but curious. Anyway, that's it. Even though I wasn't convinced by my own piratey past life, I did try to see if I could find out anything about Peter Macy, the sailor I'd mentioned under hypnosis. But it wasn't just him that was being elusive. Every time I mention past life regression, reincarnation, people go, oh yeah, I had this amazing story about there was a woman who was regressed and she suddenly knew all this stuff she couldn't possibly have known. And then when I've been looking for these stories, I can't find them. And to be honest, I was beginning to think, are these sort of apocryphal tales? I have found lots of books, but it's every time you scratch the surface of these things, it's quite hard to actually find the people or be sure about what they did and didn't know beforehand. But I've got one, I've got this one that I'd really like to follow up. It's quite extraordinary. This lady, Jenny Smedley, she was very depressed and unhappy, and after being regressed has suddenly undergone a transformation, has huge success and very happy in herself. But just to add another extraordinary dimension, she believes that the person she in her past life was married to is now in this life the country musician Garth Brooks. So it's a very unusual story. She says when she went back to the house that she believed she used to live in, she'd never been there before, but she apparently was able to tell the owners about a secret room they hadn't found, she said. So we like that sort of thing. That's the sort of thing we want. So I'm definitely going to follow this up. She's got a website as well, which I'm looking at now. Very strange story. Garth Brooks seems to have taken it very well. The next day, I set off to meet Jenny in the Hampshire village that was apparently the site of her former life. So, Jenny, having read your extraordinary book, I was just wondering, can you talk me through it all from the beginning?
Very, very briefly. I was a depressed person. I had a wonderful husband, wonderful house, wonderful son, no problems at all, apparently. Every time I was sort of happy, something would hit me, and I'd feel like I didn't deserve to be happy. There was something wrong. So this naturally blighted my life, and then one day I was just sitting there, depressed, as usual. Somebody came on the television, Garth Brooks. And it was just his face, he was talking, he wasn't singing, didn't know who he was. But in that instant, I knew that this depression had just dissipated and that it was never going to come back, but I had no idea what that meant at all. And it took a friend who I said, you know, there must be some connection between me and this person. He lives in another continent, but there's some connection. And she said, well, of course there is, there's a psychic connection between you, there's a link. So I said, but I never met him. And she said, not in this life. And then, of course, it took me about 6 months to go for regression because I knew that it wasn't going to be very nice what I found out. I knew that this euphoria I was feeling was going to be punctured by the story I was going to hear.
In her book Ripples, Jenny tells the story of her past life in 17th century Hampshire. She was Madeline, a 19-year-old from a wealthy family who fell in love with and secretly married Ryan, a young Irish soldier. Her parents didn't approve, and when Ryan is abducted and murdered, she commits suicide. Jenny believes that Ryan's new incarnation is Garth Brooks. Jenny was so convinced by her regression that she travelled 3,000 miles to Nashville in an attempt to meet Garth and tell him her story.
What was Garth's reaction?
He was absolutely wonderful.
Really?
He seemed to think it was all fascinating. You've got a picture of him giving me a hug. You know.
No, this is a lovely picture.
After meeting Garth, the most extraordinary thing that happened was that I'd had an abdominal pain. Ever since I was about 14, doctors could never find a cure for it. Met Garth, the pain went. And it actually turned out to be exactly where Ryan Fitzgerald was stabbed.
And according to Jenny, it's rumoured that Garth has a scar in the same place.
No. That is extraordinary.
Jenny had had an amazing past life experience that had completely changed her life. But despite the powerful connection she obviously felt with Garth Brooks, Madeline and Ryan, she didn't share my obsession with verification.
You know, people are always on about evidence. They want to see records, don't they?
Yeah, they want to verify things.
They do.
But didn't you want to?
No, it never bothered me. It wasn't about that with me. It was about my own personal experience and what happened to
The effect
me,
it
you know.
had.
But yeah, I mean, the trouble is, if you find records, people say, oh, well, you probably looked at them before. And if you don't find them, they say, well, it's not true then.
But I still wanted to see if I could find out anything that would verify Jenny's story about Madeline and Ryan. So I paid a visit to the local history section of the library, but I couldn't find anything. We also tried to contact Garth Brooks to see what he thought about it all, but his representatives declined to comment.
God, well, that was a fascinating story. You cannot argue with that. It's an extraordinary story, and I think the thing that one has to bring home most from when you hear it is just what a fabulously positive effect it's had on Jenny's life. What was interesting was that Jenny is not interested in verifying the facts. She doesn't need proof. She says other people who want proof. And she's right, it's other people who are looking for proof. And yeah, in a sense, why should she look for proof? It's had this effect on her, and in a way that's the end of the story. It's really hard to find proof of this stuff. And although I can imagine evidence that might open my mind further, I'm still not finding any. So many people believe in this. I keep thinking, there's got to be more to find out. And I'm quite sure there is. There's still lots more I want to do in investigating this.
I'd now seen quite a few people, and they'd all come up with something, events that sometimes had an intense emotional effect, but no information that could prove this as a verifiable past life memory. I still wasn't sure of actually what was going on. I thought it was time to ask an expert what they thought was happening, so I went to see Professor Chris French.
I was wondering, what do you think is going on when someone is being regressed?
In actual fact, all the research shows that people are essentially producing a narrative that's based on fantasy, imagination, bits and pieces of information they've picked up from various places, and they're kind of reliving that. And they sincerely then believe that they are actually recovering memories of things which actually did take place. But all the evidence suggests that's not in fact what's happening. It's basically a fantasy.
Why do you think so many people do believe in it as a genuine phenomenon?
I think there's two reasons. One is just the general reason for believing in reincarnation and find it attractive is just the idea that, you know, we don't die, that in some form we go on. I mean, it's a very comforting belief, and we'd all love to believe that. Mm. And it's part of, you know, lots of major religions. So there's that on the one hand. I mean, I think in our kind of modern times, this idea has developed that any of your kind of current psychological problems could be explained in terms of something that happened to you in a past life. It also offers the hope of some kind of solution to the problem, that by identifying it and working through it, that you might be able to solve it. If you believe that that is a genuine explanation, you accept it, and it makes sense to you, then, I mean, given that the problem was psychological in the first place, a psychological solution is quite possibly going to work for you, in which case don't knock it. But on the other hand, as to whether there really is anything in the idea that people really are going back into these past lives, the evidence just isn't there.
I don't really know what to think about that. Well, I do know what I think about that, but I do have to keep an open mind. And also, I've got other things on my mind at the moment, which is that I've just found out that for my final challenge, I've got to hypnotise someone, actually properly hypnotise them, and hopefully have them come up with details of a past life that we can explore. How is that going to happen? I can't imagine myself hypnotising anyone. Oh, God.
Join me after the break when I try to hypnotise former Hollyoaks actor and Ultimate Combat champion Alex Thorne. Greg Antoy is a clinical hypnotherapist, and he's been a past life regression therapist for many years. He's regressed hundreds of clients into previous incarnations, and he was going to be my hypnosis teacher. He'd arranged for me to watch a session with one of his clients.
And just relax.
I watched closely as Greg sent his subject under. I was very aware that soon I was going to have to do this for myself.
Relaxing and soothing and relaxing.
Greg had devised his own very effective way of hypnotising subjects, which, sadly because of broadcasting rules, we're not allowed to show you. But there was something very special about the way he was speaking and the phrases he kept repeating.
Floating and sinking, sinking and floating.
After the session, Greg explained his technique, the one I was going to have to learn. It did sound complex, but I wondered if because of that, it was going to have a more powerful effect than the guided visualization fairy story.
The conscious mind acts as a gatekeeper to the unconscious. The unconscious is almost like a child. It's so impressionable. It accepts everything as being true, which is why the conscious mind is there in the foreground to actually filter any chaff or things that aren't true. The sneaky hypnotherapist has got to bypass this mental guard dog.
So it's a distraction technique.
It's a distraction's one element to it, and yes, that's fundamentally it. You are distracting the conscious mind. The conscious mind can only hold something like 7 plus or minus 2 items of information in its memory, if you like, and operate on it. And if it goes into overload, it gets confused.
I mean, is tone important? I mean, it seems to me, because the way you talk when you're doing the hypnosis process is very different to the way you talk as we're talking now.
Yes, it is. I speak in a very, very calm and quiet, but, you know, sort of very pedestrian sort of manner, don't I? And that sort of helps set the scene of relaxation.
Right.
And the content's important as well, because I tend to use some very ambiguous terms.
Right.
Like, I think floating and sinking is one of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, this sort of confuses the conscious mind as well. Oh. You can also use things like convincers.
What's that?
Words like really and surely. You probably noticed a few of those words in my dialogue. And really mean, really, here you go. And actually, they are known as convincers. And so you're really working on different levels.
So you just did it to me. So, Greg, what would be my next step? I mean, would I actually be able to, and with your supervision, obviously, attempt to do that?
Absolutely, yes.
The rhythm thing, can you coach me on that?
Let's say sinking and floating, almost a patronising tone, isn't it? But really, I mean, it's meant to get results.
And do it again, so
sinking and floating and floating and sinking. And deeper and deeper.
Deeper and deeper.
Deeper, getting deeper and deeper. But really, go into free flow journey. I mean, that'll
really?
help. Yeah, seriously. I mean, just don't be highbrow.
Freestyling.
Yeah, just do what's right for you.
So is that what I should do next? Rather than kind of learn your script, as it were, to sort of come up with something of my own? Would that be something you'd recommend?
I'd say so, yes. I mean, you can use certain elements of what I do because...
Oh, yeah.
And actually add your own slant and things.
How exciting. It's
My
been
pleasure.
just fascinating, Greg. That's a lot to take in, but luckily Greg was going to be there to help me get through. And after all, the hypnosis was just a means to an end. The end goal was to discover some verifiable information on my subject's past life. God, I've been trying to think of some of my own things to say for the hypnosis sort of speech thing, but it's actually, he's hit on quite perfect ones, because there's that perfect ambiguity with the floating and the sinking, and I haven't actually been able to come up with a better alternative yet. We've come up with drifting and staying still. That doesn't work. It works for the ambiguity, but it doesn't sound very relaxing when you say it, even in the special voice. Well, heavier and lighter. I'm trying to think along the lines of heavier and lighter. Does that work? You're feeling heavier and lighter. Heavier and lighter. Sleepy and energized. That's rubbish. Gliding, no. Smoking and drinking. That's quite relaxing. It's making me really nervous, actually, now the reality that I'm going to be trying to do this. I'm starting to wonder whether I should just stick with Greg's. In the end, I gave up and decided to use Greg's words and just concentrated on getting the tone right. Oh, God. Floating and sinking, sinking and floating, all at the same time. It does sound so patronising when I do it. You're feeling more and more relaxed, more and more at peace, more and more at ease. Okay, at least I'm able to do that, looking myself in the eye without laughing now. That's got to be an improvement. Actor, model and martial arts expert Alex Thorne had volunteered to be the subject of my final challenge. As well as having the sort of glamorous lifestyle you'd expect from a busy television actor, Alex has a darker side. He's one of Britain's most accomplished ultimate combat fighters. In fact, he's so good, he often finds it hard to find opponents who'll take him on. He'd agreed to undergo past life hypnosis with me because he was keen to discover why he had these two seemingly opposite sides to his character, the sensitive actor and the fearsome fighter.
I often wonder why I have this fascination for this, because I really feel like a peaceful person.
Yes.
But I've got this, while I'm a fighter as well, I want to do some martial arts and stuff.
Yeah.
And the inside, I want to be so creative, and I'm an actor.
Walking very slowly and ponderously downstairs because I'm just kind of dreading or just apprehensive, nervous about going to hypnotise Alex. I hope I've had enough practice and I've done my best, but what if he just sits there and doesn't get hypnotised? Where will we be? I mean, surely. I just always thought of hypnosis as this thing that would take forever to learn, and so the idea of, even though I've done my best and practiced, the idea of me being able to do it is a really hard one to take on board. I'm going to take a deep breath and wish me luck. So, Alex, thank you very much for volunteering. This is very kind of you. And hypnosis is a difficult and sometimes dangerous practice for the inexperienced. So for Alex's safety, Greg was there to supervise. And how relaxed are you feeling right now?
I feel very relaxed, and we've had a chat, and it's like all things quite mellow and chilled.
Excellent. So if you just allow yourself to take a deep breath in, and really long, slow breath as you get yourself comfortable. You breathe in to the count of 5 and squeeze the breath out slowly. And it's funny how time almost seems to slow down for a bit when you do that. Oh, this seems to be going all right. He's drifting off nicely and... Oh no, he started fidgeting now. Is it working? And allow your mind to dwell on the tips of your toes and just register any changes and feeling there. Yes, he seems to be getting hypnotised. Broadcast regulations about hypnosis on television mean that I can't show you everything I did to put Alex under. But luckily, I did remember what Greg had taught me. Sinking and floating, floating and sinking, almost all at the same time. Alex was finally under, and as he began to tell his story, I wondered if his acting skills would mean a more dramatic past life recall.
It looks like by the sea.
What sort of year do you think it is?
30s, 40s.
And do you live
I see a road with
a road?
white fences. Is it Weymouth?
Weymouth. Did you work today?
No, I don't want to talk about work.
Is it tiring? Strenuous?
Stress.
Stress? What is it that you do?
When he said work, I just saw like submarines and dark and just black.
Things were getting interesting. Alex then came up with the name...
You Roger? No.
How about a surname?
Collins just came to my mind.
Roger Collins.
I don't know why.
Does that sound right?
Roger Collins? I miss my family.
Where are they, do you know?
They're safe.
They're safe.
It must be war. War? It's gotta be. I'm English. I'm an agent. British intelligence.
And do you need to infiltrate some particular operation?
Deutschland.
Where are you going to Deutschland? You speak German, Roger. Guten Morgen, Roger.
Guten Morgen.
Dankeschön.
Bitte schön.
Suddenly, British intelligence agent Roger Collins was in Nazi Germany on a secret mission when things went badly wrong for him.
I've got a German uniform on. Grenade. Wow. Something's burning. A lorry.
Have you carried out your mission yet, Roger?
I don't know. My head hurts.
Are you hurt?
Yeah, I'm cut. I've got a big gash in my leg.
And your head hurts too? Anywhere else?
I'm pumping. And now I'm tired.
Are you bleeding? What happened? Why is the lorry burning? What went wrong?
At this point, Greg thought Alex was getting too stressed reliving this incident, and we brought him back to the here and now.
And you're becoming more and more awake and aware.
And then we clap and you
Oh my God.
Aye.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
Was that weird?
Oh my God, that was very weird. Quite amazing.
Wow.
Jeez.
It's amazing how. It's amazing how Alex's face changed. You see
Oh
it?
my God.
Yeah. Is the war something is that a period of history you're interested in?
Yeah, but not overly.
Yeah.
I mean, I love all history, but it's not, I'm not obsessed with it by any means.
Right.
You know, only as any other young lad would be.
Sure. I mean, do you believe that was a past life and remembering it, or does that seem a difficult thing to take on board?
It's going to take a little while.
Yeah.
I'm very open to it.
Right.
Very open. I just need to let that assimilate.
Yeah. Gosh, Alex, thank you so much for going through all that for
Thank
us.
you. It was kind of like, that was interesting. I like that.
We failed to find any record of Roger Collins, but But who knows, perhaps his identity is still protected under the Official Secrets Act.
Well, there are a few surprises there in my journey into past life regression. The first being, I think, there was that expectation that you're going to get everybody being Cleopatra. We didn't have one Cleopatra, and I tell you what, there were times when I kind of wish there was. I just think I was expecting people to have very dramatic things that they were coming up with, and everyone seemed to be quite subtle, quite gentle, and also in a way related to things that concern us now. This almost seems to be some kind of form of therapy. It's something that people genuinely find helpful. What I wanted to find more than anything was some kind of evidence. And I looked and I looked. I looked at the people that we saw and the things that they'd come up with. And we also looked at old, well-documented cases. And I have to say that I couldn't find any verification. Ultimately, I think it's a matter of belief. You either believe that we've all lived before and we can remember these past lives, or that's not something you believe. And if you're somebody who requires proof and verification in order to believe, then I'm going to assume that you don't.
Jane finds herself totally charmed in next week's investigation. She's looking at Wiccan religion and casting spells next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Stay here now for Sexcetera.